Hi, everybody, and welcome to El Camino People, the podcast. Today and lately, it's been a pleasure because I'm finally getting to see pilgrims that I met some of them while they were working the Camino Santiago, and I was able to interview them when they finished the Camino. And how it feels, what happens when you go the Camino once. Usually, you come back. And today we have our dear friend Lynray, and you are back here again. It's the third time that we
Yay.
met. Second one we met online.
Yeah,
But for the ones that don't know, we interviewed him. I think it's the first year I was, kind of like going with the Camino people, and also we were like, you were one of the first lucky ones that we met in Pamplona.
that's crazy. Yeah, I just remember we connected on Instagram, I think,
Yeah,
and you caught me just before I came to Pamplona. Yeah, it was great meeting you.
and this was what? What was the first Camino? 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
It was 2018 because I just finished
2018,
my
four
master's in.
years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's incredible. How time flies. I'm like the whole COVID. My perception of time is just so.
it's crazy. Yeah, yeah. I think the 2 years that were in COVID don't actually count.
Yeah,
Um,
for me it's the same, man. Like when I tell my age, I'm like, how old are you? I'm like, I don't know,
It was my
36-ish.
30th, like when COVID started. Literally, I had a birthday party planned, and the week before, yeah, we I think we had our first COVID case in South Africa, so things just like went crazy. Um, but yeah, so those 2 years, I think I only had my 30th when I was, yeah, it was this year, 32. Yeah, it's
But that's
crazy.
amazing. 4 years, two Caminos, and here you are again.
Yeah, it's great.
So, as you always know, we always start with a 1 minute questionnaire. I have my list here and I have my
Mhm.
timer in my little screen. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Your first Camino.
Francis.
How many Caminos?
Two.
One city,
Von Sabanen,
one meal,
Calda Galega,
a memory,
uh, my first day.
a song,
You won't know it, but Imali.
a stage on the way,
The what? Sorry?
one of the stages on the Camino,
Maseta,
one color,
green.
a sad moment,
Getting very lost on a cornfield and not finding my way out very
a
easily.
happy moment.
Um, Meeting my Camino family. Yeah.
Perfect, Tim. And there's a new question that I want to add to this one, but at this one I want to have with no time. If you can choose someone to walk the Camino with, who will you choose to walk it with?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Anyone in the world.
Anyone in the world? I think Jeff Probst, because I love Survivor. So I don't know if you know Survivor in Europe, but
I know
like I
the show, but yeah, probably many people won't know it. But
yeah, so just to get like intel about the show, and I think it'd be fun to walk with.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So you walked your first Camino 2018. For the ones that want to know what happened there, I will call them to go and listen to the other interview. But then, the thing is like 4 years and then you came back to the Camino. Why coming back to the Camino again? Why do you think it was the time for a Camino?
Um, so yeah, during COVID, I did a lot of like internal work, a lot of like healing work and introspecting, getting to know myself on a deeper level.
Hmm.
Um, and I think like just being indoors for a lot of like that period, I just wanted to be out in nature. So I always said like that's going to be one of the first trips that I'm going to do like once travel gets going and I get to travel again. And yeah, I just had a calling of being in nature and the whole process of just you have so much time to think on the Camino, and I really needed that time. Um, and I know how much good it did for me, like the previous on the first one. So yeah, I had to get back.
And the things like always when I talk, and you're really in your second Camino, so I think the first Camino is always the Frances is always great and perfect for first Camino, but when you have to choose your second, so many options open because after your first Camino, you met all these people that probably talk to you about the Camino del Norte, Via de la Plata, all these little Caminos come out, and then it's like, how do you choose your second one? So how did you decided which Camino to walk this time?
So this one, I definitely wanted to start from Portugal because I was on a remote working trip, like in Europe, and one of the cities that I was going to be based in was Porto, and I just thought it would be perfect. I'd leave my bags in Porto, start walking, and then obviously return to it afterwards. But I like speaking to many other pilgrims. A lot of them also enjoyed the Portuguese route. I knew that it would be quieter. Um, I don't think like the first 2 days were really quiet for me. But yeah, so I just thought, Portugal, I love Portuguese culture in general as well. I thought it could, yeah, so I just thought that would be my next one. But Del Norte is definitely on the list for my next Camino.
And then, a lot of people they think, when you plan your Camino, what leads you to your second one, usually sometimes is you have the expectations of the Camino. No? And sometimes when you have that great experience of the Camino Frances, were you going to do your second Camino with with expectations, or were you more like kind of like open like in your first Camino?
Yeah, I think I was very open, but as I started walking, I realized there were hidden expectations, expectations that I hadn't uh, like consciously thought of. And so there was a lot of comparison during the first couple of days, but then I also just let go of all of them and let the experience uh, show me the way.
And did you choose because from Porto you can walk the Camino Interior, or the inland Camino or the coastal. So which one did you choose?
So I wanted a bit of the coastal and the central. So I started on the first day. I walked to Villa de How do you say it?
Vila do Conde?
Conde, and then on day two I transferred to the central to Barcelos. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to see the sea, but on day one I just realized that. Um, a lot of it was the same kind of landscape, next to the sea. I don't know if the whole route is like that, but that was one of the reasons of why I wanted to go like to the central route because I thought that there'd be more variety there.
And how was the central? Because for me, I walk the coastal and I love it. I think it's super relaxed. It's beautiful, the landscape. And I think the beauty is what you say, sometimes it's just the same, but that allows you also to go into more internal Camino, more lonely Camino. But a lot of people they said, that the coastal is, for nature and meditation, and the central is more cultural and more, social. So what can you tell us about the central?
Yeah, the central for me. Well, yeah, I enjoyed the culture and the different cities. It It was a different experience for me, just because a lot of the time I was for this one, I think we'll get into it probably during the the chat, but I was in pain for a lot of this Camino. So I think a lot of my experience was focused on my pain, and I didn't have as much time as I did in the Spanish Camino to like I'd usually get to the cities around 2 or 3, and then have the
Mhm.
afternoon to explore. This Camino, I was arriving at night. Like
What?
it was bad. Yeah, at night. Like, yeah, we'll get into that. But
Holy cow. And
a
for the
lot
ones
of,
that don't know, usually I'm like the stages are pretty similar to the Camino Frances. So that means that you were going half a speed than you were walking on your Camino Francés. So that's a lot of pain, my friend.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of pain, and at one point, I thought I may not finish.
Hmm.
I contacted my like a friend of mine was a doctor, just asking if it is okay. Yeah, I got shin splits on day 4. No, 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 no. On day, yeah, officially actually on day 4.
Officially, but
But yeah, but that was mainly due to a couple of things, right? I was trying to do the 14-day Camino in 10 days. So the
okay.
first 4 days, I really loaded up the kilometers, like 35 kilometers to 40. Or no, like, yeah, around about 35. Um, and the second reason was that my shoes were too small. So I had used like the same my usual shoe size, but usually you should
Hmm.
always use a shoe size bigger.
A little bigger or
Um,
something wider. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then I'm a bit of a rebel, so I always go over the baggage allowance. Like, usually you're supposed to do 10% of your body weight, and
Yeah, no, I'm not a fighter of the 10%. I'm usually my backpack is much more than my 10%. Thank God I'm not. If I am 10%, I will be like 100 and something kilos. But again, I'm used to far packing. But that's again,
yeah,
it depends on everyone. But as a rule, it can be fit. Anything bigger than that, if you are not used to, and also when you are walking such a long distance, that's the problem. If you do a normal distance, that's great. But if you have 12 kilos in your backpack for 40K,
yeah,
that's a lot of force in your knees and body and everything.
exactly. And I think like I did have like, the usual growing pains of the first couple of days. That's why like
Yeah.
I do think that's the beauty in like longer caminos.
Hmm.
Because usually the first week is about your body just realizing that, okay, this is what we're doing, we're on an adventure, we're walking like long, a lot of kilometers each day, and it gets into that rhythm. Whereas, for the 10-day Camino, you don't have that much time, you know.
Hmm.
But it was like on day 8 and day 9, my shin splits had actually started healing. Um, so so yeah, like that just shows that after day 8 I would have been fine.
Hmm.
So but
But
yeah,
there is a tricky line over there because, as you say, sometimes shin splits or having like tendinitis, and that's the pilgrim killer. A lot of people suffer them; they don't know it, and something
yeah,
that can really like fucked up your whole Camino and your after Camino, because those things are, shin splits. This easier to recover, but when you have fascia plantaris or something like that, it's just
yeah,
tricky. But how did you decide, where the pain to stop, where the pain to continue? I'm like, that's a lot of people. There's this big fight, that you shouldn't be suffering the Camino, but sometimes, as you were saying, the suffering is also part of it, and it's what's
yeah.
made you feel alive and what gets you through a deeper thinking. And sometimes I'm like, but how did you manage 4 days of arriving at 9 in the Camino? Because that doesn't give you time to recover. So it was like this roulette of like, you are stressed, your body's stressed, and you get there, you didn't get the nice break, because at the end the Camino is so well designed that you walk in the morning, you relax in the afternoon, so your body decompress, and then you get a good night's sleep, and then you are ready to go. But in your case, arriving at 9 doesn't allow your body to recover fully for the next day. So, and you keep going for 4 days. So, how was
Yeah.
your daily routine over there, and how did you manage that?
So I definitely like I think in my previous Camino I used to start quite early. I used to start at 6. This Camino I was starting at like 8 or 9, so I was always like a little bit late. I think that's also like played a part in me arriving that late. But I knew that after these 4 days, I would have shorter days. So that's kind of how I planned it.
Okay.
Go hard the first 4 days so that you can really enjoy the last part of the Camino. Because then it would be like 20Ks, 25Ks,
Hmm.
17Ks. But so my plan was actually to do the first 4 days with like those high amounts of kilometers. But on day four, it started raining, and that's actually, yeah, that was actually part of my Camino family story. I met like my Camino family for this route, and we just decided to stay in this random town, Rubiales. So I didn't actually walk as far as I was supposed to on day four, and it was perfect because as we entered that town, the shin splits like really like shot up my leg, and like the pain, yeah, it was quite bad.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess like on that day was so great, just in terms of meeting people that you really enjoy the company,
Hmm.
and I remember we had lots of wine and conversations. We like just couldn't stop chatting. It's like being on a great first date. We just like chatting and chatting and chatting. I remember like we had lunch, and then we started drinking wine, and then like just conversation was going, and the next thing is like, oh shit, we have to go to dinner. So we had to go straight from lunch to dinner. So I think because I was also just so excited by that day, I was like, I have to continue. And um, I think just in general, like I realized on this Camino that like I'm not someone to give up.
Hmm.
So I would push maybe as stupidity, maybe as perseverance, but I knew deep down that I would like, okay, unless I had to be like carried off in like an ambulance, like I was going to finish. But yeah, like I was really grateful for like day four. It gave me the boost to finish. Yeah.
I think sometimes it's, you say stupidity or being, not just stuff. Sometimes I think it's a mix of both. And that's the beauty. You need to know yourself. And sometimes I can lead you into an amazing experience and being, and see how you can push yourself further. And sometimes they can push you to maybe it's time to go out. And that's when you decide if it's time to go home. But in your case, you push yourself and you succeed. So I guess, there's no one rule. That's what I don't like the 10% rule or the walking
Yeah.
rule or the sur rules, because each one has a different Camino. And I seen people like you, my really good friend Claudio, his first Camino, his feet were destroyed with, he was suffering overweight, and he suffered the whole Camino. And for him, it's one of the best experience of his life. So, you know,
No, I
never
mean,
know.
I've got so many stories about that. I like the last Camino. So just rewinding to our first Camino, uh, my cousin came, and towards the end of my last Camino, and this was our first international trip. And I'd given her all of the rules that you just mentioned, like 10% of your body weight, right shoes, don't bring a lot of things. And she's a beautician. And then she came there, and she had brought all of her beauty products. She had gotten her nails done. She had bought all of this new clothes, and her bag was so heavy. And the first couple of days, she cried, like she was crying. And luckily, at that point, I had reconnected with one of the girls in my Camino family, and her mother was there, and both of them were doctors. And obviously, um, her mother had that like motherly touch that I didn't
Of
have.
course.
'Cause I was like, I told you so. Why did you do this? And yeah, it just worked out so beautifully, that my my new friend, had her mother there, and we all just like everything just worked. And in the end, she said it was one of her best experiences, and that's how it has to happen some of the times,
So
to
true.
have some pain. Yeah,
Sometimes the way you're learning, I feel my hiking, sometimes the days that I remember the most is the ones that I suffer the most, that you were right on the edge, where like, maybe I should call someone to rescue me, and then you come out. But I think that's sometimes for, people that you are searching and you are this kind of person, that's what leads you to another place. And sometimes, I think it's great to push yourself in life and not living in the bubble that sometimes we are in. But it is
yeah,
hard to, and also that's one of the things that I also try to tell people, in the Camino, there's things that can happen. There's people that even passed away in the Camino. So just be careful and know your limits, and at least be close to someone that can help you just in case.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I
And
found it like this, like they say that everyone on the Camino becomes a doctor, right? That's one of the sayings. Uh, and I found this like on this experience, like so many people were just willing to help. As people would pass me because I'd be walking so slow, even like the grannies would be passing me, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'll be like, "Yes, I'm okay." And it's just that Camino family and community that you experience,
And
that
also so
is
humbling because sometimes, we the young we go so fast, we think that we are, and sometimes that pain. I'm like, I just have a race this Sunday, and it was so much pain. I was in pain the last part. And usually the last part, I go fast, and I was that, and people were passing me, and I'm like, yeah, sometimes it's okay if people pass you. I'm like, but you're gonna make
100%.
it, and I make it to the end, and it feels like crap, but I learn also. So I think sometimes, the Camino. What I always say, the Camino always have something waiting for you, and it may be what you want, but sometimes it may be what you need, or sometimes it may be neither one. So that's the
Yeah,
beauty of it.
yeah.
So one of the things a lot of people, when we talk about the Caminos, is the difference between the difference, one Camino or the other. What will you say is the difference between the Camino Frances and the Camino Portuguese? What was your feeling of both?
So the Camino Portuguese is it's I found it's a lot more like if you want to have a quieter Camino. So it definitely was a quieter experience for me, not as festive, um, but that was good. Like that's kind of also one of the reasons that I wanted to do it.
Hmm.
Um, the French one, I would say, if you're doing a Camino for the first time, you definitely have to do the French one. That just gives you the full experience of community. Well, both you get the community, but the French one it gets quite festive and festive in not necessarily drinking, but it's just um, every I felt like when I started walking, it felt like the first day at school. Everyone was talking to everybody. It's like, oh, I'm going to talk to you a little bit, and like trying to find their people. Obviously, I think
And where
also
you fit.
everyone and where you fit. So, but there's just like a different vibe in the French Camino. I also like honestly, I think that the landscape on the French Camino was a lot better. But I think because you have so much time, there's just so much more variety,
Hmm. Yeah.
whereas the Portuguese one is obviously a lot shorter, like 4 times shorter.
Hmm.
So it's more limited. And I think in like obviously my own experience, um, the Portuguese was a lot tougher for me uh, than the French experience. But that was just a personal experience. And that was the lesson that I had to learn. And I think it was because I didn't really have any physical issues in the French one because I had so much time. You're going with so much time, and you're not necessarily pushing yourself as much as I did for the Portuguese one. Um, and I thought that, oh, you know what? I'm gonna leave at 6 every day. I'll probably get to the towns at 12 because I'm a lot fitter than I was in the French one. And then I'm going to have the whole afternoon to explore and blog and, work on so many things. It was not that. So, as you said, like it was a very humbling experience. But yeah, I think also the food, like on the Portuguese route, at least the Portugal side of it. A lot more people spoke English than in Spain.
Really?
So that's one of the things that you use to make your decision. That's also one
Hmm.
thing to think about. But yeah, no, both of them gave me what I needed, I think. Um,
What about the Camino people, the Camino family? How does it feel? What kind of people? Because a lot of people times, we see some kinds of people. You go to the Via de la Plata, it's more a much older crew. You know, you go to the Frances, maybe it's the younger during the summer. During the winter, you have, you know, different older. What kind of vibe or people were in the Camino Portuguese at the time they were walking?
Uh, so the first 2 days, I didn't speak to anybody really. I didn't
You
see
didn't see
anybody.
anybody, or you didn't speak to anybody?
I I saw very few people, very, very, very few people. I thought like I walked totally alone by myself for the first 2 days.
For me, it was the
Um,
same. I have to say, in the coastal, when I did the coastal, I think the first 2 days I was early
yeah,
riser like you, and I think I saw maybe 3 or 4 people walking. When I arrived to the albergue, there were more people at the end, but while walking on the first day, maybe two, three the most.
yeah, yeah. And then on day 3, when I arrived in Ponte de Lima, that's when it started feeling like a Camino for me. Um,
Hmm.
just like because I realized that I really like the community and the people, and that's a big part of a Camino experience for me. But my Camino family was young, younger than me actually. Um, so yeah, it was a good mix of people. I think eventually, but obviously, so many more people do the French route. So you have much more variety of people. But I found that there were on the Portuguese route, there were a lot of Europeans. You know, a lot
Okay.
more just Europeans. I didn't see as many like as I did in the previous one, like South Koreans and
Yeah.
Asians, and a lot more diversity. Um, yeah.
What about the Camino? Were they
So,
the first? Were they first Camino, or were they like second or third Camino?
um, a lot first Camino, but I
Really?
also a good amount of them were second Camino. So I've met at least one guy who he had walked the French route and then just continued like to Porto. So he was walking the opposite
Uh-huh.
direction, right?
The other way.
And one of the girls in my Camino family, she had also just done the French one, and then she started the Portuguese route from Porto, going back to
Hmm.
Santiago. Um, but yeah, so I think there was like a good mix of people who were on the second, and then a lot of first timers as well. I think obviously people choose the Portuguese route as the first one in some cases because it's so short, you know, and a lot of people don't have
Yeah.
leave. So they're like, okay, I can do this. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
instead of breaking the Camino Frances, I will do the whole Portuguese. That's kind of like, okay,
exactly.
starts from Porto and I do the whole thing, no? I love it because right now I'm remembering your stories and the rain and you feeling miserable. And it was so different. Your stories from the Frances and your reels from the Portuguese were so different. You can tell that experience was like, but you can see the spike when you found your family. And it was like, okay, now it's a more funny, more even
Yeah.
the suffering.
Yeah, no, like as you say, like the Camino just teaches you the things that you need to be taught. And I in this Camino, I really found a new respect and appreciation for my body. Um, like a lot of that time, it felt like I had lost the ability to walk. And on day 8 or day 9, when I could start to walk with ease again, it was like I was walking for the first time. I was like, oh, you know.
Wow.
So that is just like, yeah, it was quite bad. A lot of people don't know how bad it was. I had to buy a walking stick, and this experience was quite different. I also felt like sometimes I felt I got the feeling that it was like kind of like speed dating, you know, because I had experienced like the long Camino, and this was like, okay, we need to learn all the lessons and meet all the people in these 10 days, and I think that that's like speaking to other people. That's the experience that they had as well, you know, and um, that's why I always say like you have to do like the long Camino because um, a lot of them came in with. You know, these expectations. I'm going to walk the Camino and I'm going to find all the answers. And a lot of them were like, the answers haven't come to me. We had those kind of conversations, you know.
Just have more questions, no?
It's just like, um, yeah. And one thing I definitely didn't expect on this Camino was the weather because I was coming in summer. And so I really didn't expect the rain, and it rained from like most of my Camino,
You
at least
were,
70% of my Camino. Yeah, it was raining.
and really, really, you got like, I mean, it was, yeah, and that can happen in Portugal and in Galicia. Anything can happen. And with the
Mm,
weather right now, I'm like, till today, it's been almost kind of like super hot here in the north, and it's been weird. So now when people ask me about the weather here in Spain, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, anything can happen.
yeah,
But that's the
yeah,
Camino.
yeah. There was this one day, I think it was like day 6. That was, I think, the most challenging day for me, because this was the day, like, it was a day after I'd taken a shorter route, which I wasn't supposed like stop a little bit earlier than I was supposed to. So this on day 6, I had to walk more kilometers. And on this day, it was pouring rain. Like it was, I don't know, it was just like nonstop pouring rain. Um, no one was around me because I had started late, and even the my Camino family, like one girl was like an hour ahead of me, and one girl was an hour behind me. So it was like just no one in sight, and I was walking through the forest, like this forest, and it was really beautiful. But I just had a new like appreciation for myself as well, because on that day I had gotten messages from my host, in the town that I was walking to, and as well as messages from the girl behind me asking like, "Don't you want to take a cab?" Don't you? I was like, "No, no ways!" Like even.
Like, here you go. Come on, come on, come on.
Yeah, because like the host was concerned with my leg and rain, and if I slip,
Mhm.
and then because the rain was that bad, and I was just like, no, no, I'm just gonna keep on walking, and I think that was one of the biggest like like days for me in the Camino, because it just taught me like a lot about myself, and actually I had a new appreciation, well, even more of an appreciation for nature, because in those moments, like nature was all around me. So I felt so connected to it, especially like walking through a forest and got the trees and the grass and everything. At one point, I must admit, uh, the trees started to talk to me. They were like, "Hey, Lynray." Yeah, I guess that was just I was getting a bit delirious, but
Maybe the tree were talking to you. Who knows?
maybe the trees were talking to
The
me.
tree talked to you,
I don't know.
so why not? I think there is something beautiful in walking on the rain on a forest. For me, I
Yeah,
like, again, when you're on a long distance hike, it's horrible because you need to get dry and you need to go to the place. But for me, when I go running and I love on the rain, the smells, the connection, everything gets, more, I don't know, like, you know, square. It's like you feel the everything is there. And if ever been in a forest with a huge storm, electric storm, the feeling, the smell, I
yeah.
don't know. I think I love it. Again, for one day. When it goes after day after day after day, sometimes you're like, yeah, the trees will talk to you and everything, it's like Rumpelstiltskin running around. But that's also part of the Camino, and you made it. So, and one of the things sometimes, a lot of people they go on the second Camino, and it's like the arrival to Santiago, no? When you're previously getting to Santiago, how is the feeling of arriving to that place that you've already been there, but right now you are there but different? How was your previous, day or 2 days to the arrival?
No, it was really positive actually. Uh, so at one point in the 10 days, the Camino family had kind of split, and we all reunited on day 9. Like one of the guys, he had walked like 2 days worth, of kilometers to catch up with us. So we did kind of reach Santiago together, which was great. And then this time it was sunny. So the last time I reached Santiago, it was raining, like pouring rain. So it was like you arrive and then you just run to your accommodation, basically. So this time it was sunny, which was quite ironic, given that the whole trip was quite rainy. And then I think like before arriving, it just kind of dawned on me, that we're getting to Santiago and all of the different routes are going to meet. So the people who had walked all the different routes, um, like they all meet in Santiago. So in this one town, you can like share so many stories, between the different pilgrims, and yeah, it was quite beautiful actually.
One of the things that that I felt in the Camino, the arrival in the Camino Frances is kind of like more expecting, creates more expectation because you're going down, you see the cathedral.
Uh,
But in the Portuguese, you don't have that feeling. You kind of like get into town, you don't see anything, then you get into the mess. So it was kind of like weird. How was your feeling when you were getting through the streets? Was it the same as the first time? Was it different? How was it different?
it was a lot quieter actually. And I don't know if we were walking slow. Actually, I think we were walking quite slow. And so yeah, we were probably like one of the last people to arrive. We didn't arrive in the night, but yeah, I think now thinking back, yeah, it's exactly as you explained. It's like you didn't see um, the city or the church until you basically arrived there. Um, I think it was like Pride on the day that we arrived. So there was actually a lot of festivities happening. There were a couple of stages. There was a live mariachi band performing in the park. So it was actually a nice experience. But
Mhm.
it did feel like, we were walking in the back door, and
Yeah.
entering, it didn't feel like the front. Um, uh, but one thing like that I've just realized is like arriving in Santiago can also be anticlimactic, but that just makes you realize that it's all about the journey. A
Mhm.
lot of the Camino, it's about the journey and the stories that you have along the way. Um, so don't put too many expectations on arriving in Santiago.
That's one of the things that I realize right now that most of my caminos that I have been doing lately, they don't even finish in Santiago. Like, now I'm more inclined to do caminos farther and not finishing there because I don't need, for me, as you say, it's about the journey. Santiago is there and it's amazing arriving the first time. It's great arriving the second time. The third time is still great, but then once you go through all of that, it's like the experience of finishing a camino in the middle of nowhere on a city or just going time. It's plenty, because you go there for the journey. One of the
Yeah.
questions that I always ask people, and probably asked you in the first interview, is like, how did the Lynray that started in Porto change into the Lynray that finished in Santiago this time?
Mm. I think for me, just like in terms of the healing journey that I'm on, I think this time I really had, as I mentioned earlier on, like a real appreciation for my body, and like we take it for granted
Yes.
so often. And then I realized that I really do value community and um, relations and relationships and connections. Because in both of the Caminos, like the Camino family formed an important part of my trip and my journey, and I know you get some people who just kind of want to float,
Hmm.
so which is perfectly fine. But I realized that I actually really enjoy connection and community and family. And I think for me, it was a self introspection journey. So I think I know myself a lot better. I've got a greater appreciation for nature. Um, I feel more connected to nature as well than I did before.
It's amazing. And the final question that I ask everyone is like, is there a next Camino already planned? Did you arrive in Santiago and say, I'm walking this one next, I'm ready for a longer one, or I'm done with the Camino for now?
There's not one planned, but I think similar to yours, like I want to explore that kind of a walk, but not the Camino de Santiago. Um,
Hmm.
so maybe looking at, I know there are some walks in Asia. So possibly exploring that, but nothing is set in stone yet. But if I do come back to Spain, it's going to be well, I do want to do a portion of the French route, and I think that time I would probably bring some friends along.
Hmm.
Um, but if it's one by myself, I want to do the Del Norte. So that's the next one.
That's like a thing that I train, people our age or, our style. I'm really, so I love the Camino Santiago has something amazing, but I also want to explore some other pilgrimage, some other walks worldwide
Yeah.
to see how it feels, to see how it gets. And I know it's not going to be like the Camino, but I think that's what, the only way to learn and to see is to do it both and to see what is the difference and what do you like. But
Mm.
definitely Asia is calling me and the Camino del Norte for sure.
Yeah. I mean, some of the pilgrims that I walked with on my first Camino, I watched the Instagram stories, and there's at least two of them that just they've been walking since our first Camino, and right now they're I think walking through either South Korea or Japan, and it looks beautiful. A lot more like you need to do like a lot of camping, a lot more
Mhm.
camping and not like albergues, um, which is also a new experience in itself. Um,
Yeah, and I think that the mix of, backpacking and pilgrimage, like with albergues and style, that's a great mix of. It's so different. You learn different things, and the beauty of a pilgrimage is there, and the beauty of backpacking is something different. But I guess the mix of both will tell us. So I hope you find your Camino, your next Camino, and I'm sure you will be seen soon here in Spain, or who knows, maybe in Korea, maybe in Japan,
yeah, you need to come
maybe.
visit South Africa, man.
I know it's always on
Yeah,
my list, but I'm like, there are so many places, and I know there's a couple caminos over there, but your guys are so far, and I'm like,
it's not as
yeah,
far, please. It's like a 12-hour
I
flight.
know, but next year I know it's gonna be Asia, and but yeah, maybe we'll see. We'll see. You have to convince me and see what caminos we can do over there.
Yeah, no, awesome.
Anyway, thank you so much for being with us again, and I'm sure that a lot of people will feel this really interesting about the second experience, the suffering, and how still that you get a lot of stuff on the Camino. But
Yeah,
one of the things that we know now is like once you start walking, there's no stop. I don't know
no,
what it is with
100%.
this feeling, but it's something amazing. So if you haven't done anything yet, just go and do it. 1 week Camino, 2 weeks Camino. If you can do it, always the Frances for 30 days is perfect. But if you can, just go for a week, and you don't even have to come to Spain. Maybe in your own town, there's something around. Just give it a try.
100%. But yeah, thanks for having me again. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you, and hopefully we'll have you a third time.
Definitely. Cool.
But till then, as we always say, buen camino, ultra ya.
Buen camino. Cheers.